Oh yeah, it's another one of those. You know what I'm talking about? That time where we do one of these. Y'all ready to answer catechumen questions for the next 4 hours? Oh yeah. What's up?
So I watched the Tim debate, and I don't think Tim's really representing their position well. So I kind of want to see how you're going to move if it's represented the way I think probably Ibarra would represent it. So if you'll give me like 30 seconds, I'll lay out what I think they're saying.
Okay.
So in Catholic thought, the Trinity is explained by eternal notional acts in God, generation, spiration. Each act has an active side and a passive side, and each terminates in its proper effect. So,
well, first of all, that's problematic from the outset.
Okay.
Because it's not the Cappadocian teaching, it's not Constantinople 1. The persons are not notions or notional effects or notionally distinct.
Yeah, this seems to be like almost like some type of logical it's like a logical framework they use for verbalizing this stuff, and It seems to have some type of priority involved in it, where like logically you kind of start with this essence that,
of course,
doesn't do these powers, but it kind of has the logical capacity to do them. They're always actualized, but in their way of explaining the Trinity, I guess in their head they're kind of doing the one torch lights another torch, which lights another torch type of thing in their head. But so that is what they say.
Okay, right? But I asked Tim Gordon if the Son has the power of cause, because he said the Father is the cause, and he's giving that power of causing to the Son. And so if that's what shows equality between the Father and the Son, then what is the Spirit's power to cause? And it's not a cause. Passive spiration is not a cause, but he actually said it was a cause. So he made that mistake.
Spoke there. I don't think he should have. I think he should have, admitted to misspeaking there.
Okay. Well, I mean, you've read the Mystagogy, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So what in the Mystagogy in any way lines up with this Thomistic idea of notional distinctions? With it, it almost sounds like it's an appropriation of the Augustinian idea of the psychological analogy of the Trinity, that the Father is the mind, the Son is the will, or the Son is the Father is the mind, the Son is the speech, and the Spirit is the will. But they're trying to appropriate that for these relations within a glob. So they have this idea that the Trinity is this essentialist monad, or God is an essentialist monad, and then within this monad there are these relational distinctions. But the best critique of this is when Lossky, have you read Lossky's, I can't remember if it's Mystical Theology or the Vision of Light book?
I've read bits and pieces of Mystical Theology, but I haven't read the other one.
The other one is necessary because he has a great critique of person is relation. And that's what this Thomistic idea is grounded in, that persons are the relations between the two, or between.
Yeah, so when I was talking with Ibarra, he says essentially, I don't know why they state this principle other than arbitrarily, so maybe you can help me figure out why they say this, but he essentially says all things are equal except where relative opposition,
okay.
bars the equality.
I just shared the papers that critique relative relations of opposition. There's a Lossky paper that critiques it, and even Yves Congar, who's a Roman Catholic, has a paper saying that this development that Thomas has out of Augustinian ideas is not the Cappadocian teaching.
Yeah, well, I agree with you that it's not the Cappadocian teaching, right? But I also don't think this is the view that Tim put forth in the debate to you, right? Like, he was trying to, clearly, but I mean, the notion of passive spiration or begetting has nothing to do with causation.
Okay, but I mean, that's a medieval scholastic invention. There's nothing about passive spiration in any of the church fathers, to my knowledge. So this is something that they've made up to make sense of what it means to have a power. Because again, if the Spirit lacks this power, then what does he have? Well, he has the power of spiration is what picks him out. How could he have spiration? Oh, well, it's passive. What does that? I mean, to me, it's just a nonsense term. Doesn't mean anything.
To me, what they're trying to say there is that, like, in their mind, the Son doesn't beget because his personal property is to be the effect of the generative act of the essence, or of the Father, I guess, because the essence doesn't actually generate according to Lateran 4.
Again, I mean, their position equates a relation with a person. Okay, Aquinas says persona et relatio, person is relation. So this is a fundamental blunder because they think person and nature are identical. They don't think they're really distinct. Orthodoxy thinks they're really distinct. So they think that if person and nature are actually identical, then how would we distinguish them? And I don't think they understand hypostatic properties. You're calling them personal properties, but that's why they would go to. There's literally no reason why you would do relations of opposition unless you had a struggle with trying to distinguish the persons. Even Augustine, when you read on the Trinity, he struggles with how to distinguish them. And he does in one point admit that, yeah, it does seem like the Father is the principal cause. But because he's given cause to the Son explicitly, he then has to figure out a way, well, I can't distinguish the persons strictly with cause because that's something that Father and Son have. So I need another way to actually distinguish these persons. And he talks about relative opposition. I'm going from here, I think he does. But more specifically, Aquinas builds on it and fleshes it out even further. But the problem with relative opposition is that, number one, God is equally triad as much as he is monad. There's no dyad at all. To have relative opposition requires a dyad. This is a critique that's made in God, History, Dialectic, Volume 1. I didn't make this up. It's his critique. But beyond that, and it also gets into patristic ways of number theory and how they count it. Counting by division, that's why you don't have in the creed, it says one and undivided. Because the patristic means of counting was, particularly for the Trinity, in terms of his nature, he's undivided. But the persons are divided, right? How do I get Father and Son? Well, I divide the Father. The Father is not the Son. It doesn't mean that you're actually meant that you're not. It doesn't mean you're literally dividing them. It just means counting by division. So persons are counted by division. By identity. The essence is counted by division. That's why the creed says one and undivided. Are you familiar with this?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so I'm not trying to go off topic. I'm saying there's a reason why I'm saying this. In Ambigua 1, Maximus talks about the patristic way of counting, and he talks about monad, dyad, triad. Okay. That's how you count patristically when you're doing, like, when you're picking out the persons, you have to. This was the Jake debate when we had to do the LPT. Anyway, those are all separate topics that I mentioned in passing in the debate. But the main issue is that the whole reason why there's a problem is because they think that person and nature are identical in the Trinity. They're only notionally distinct. Aquinas says that explicitly. Augustine says
they wouldn't admit to that in a debate, right? Like
it's not controversial.
Oh, so you think if I ask Ibar or nature and person the same thing, he'll tell me yeah?
Yeah, he's said that in the past on record. Aquinas says they're notionally distinct.
Yeah.
So now they want to say, okay, well, how are we really going to distinguish the persons then? If person and nature are identical, but only from the human vantage point conceptually distinct, how do we distinguish them? It can't be on the basis of relation to origin. That's the orthodox view, because that would mean hypostatic properties, right?
Yeah.
Because the Son also has the power to cause. So cause can't be the thing that picks out the Father, because two people have cause. Okay, so how do we distinguish them? Relative opposition, relations of opposition. The Father is not the Son, not the Spirit. The Son is not the Spirit, not the Father, etc. It's stupid because that is a quality that all three share. All three share not being the other two. It's really stupid.
Yeah.
And a person is not a relation. A person is a subject. A relation is a predicate. That's Losky's critique of this nonsense.
Okay. And how did Aquinas just kind of look at Aristotle's, metaphysical categories and go, I think relation is probably the best one I can use here, or is there some other basis that he was
I don't think it had
building
anything to do with Aristotle.
Well, I mean, he's looking at his categories, right? And he's like going, relation is the best thing that I can use here at the metaphysical level of the Trinity to explain the distinctions, right?
No, he's pulling from Augustine, where Augustine, using Greek dialectics, consider the possibility of relational opposition from Neoplatonism. It's nothing to do with Aristotle. Augustine is pulling from, on the Trinity, an opposition, and could you cash these out as distinct through not being the others? Which is, again, not being the others is not a subject. It doesn't tell you anything. Like, you could say, is it true to say J is not the chair, J is not the bench, J is not the shelf? Yeah, those are all true, but they don't tell you who J is. They don't tell you. They're just negative qualities that don't identify the subject. That's why the Cappadocians say it's the Father that is the principal source and origin of the Godhead, not the essence, the Father. And that's why the Creed picks out monarchical Trinitarianism, says, I believe in one God, the Father, above all, right? And that's why his hypostatic property can't be shared with the Son. So the whole error starts from confusing nature and person, thinking that they're only notionally distinct, not really distinct, and granting the hypostatic property of the Father to the Son. Because they don't start their Trinitarianism there, they're confused, and they come up with all these wild and crazy ideas to make this. By the way, you understand that in some places, Aquinas actually says, I'm pretty sure I can pull out Summa Contra Gentiles, he actually says the procession of the Holy Spirit is from the essence. He goes even further. It's ab utroque, I believe.
Well, how does that jive with Lateran 4? Because it's very clear that there's a supreme reality that doesn't beget, doesn't spirate, isn't, it's very clear in Lateran that it doesn't do any of those things.
I mean, again, I think you're looking for harmony and consistency amongst situations and confusion. I'm serious. I mean, Aquinas contradicts himself, because early Aquinas doesn't have any position of the monarchy of the Father. And people have written about this. Later Aquinas then seems to correct that and admit, okay, actually, no, the Father is the beginning point of the Godhead. So how do you make that work? I mean, they're inconsistent, man.
Yeah, I guess to me, sometimes it sounds like they're trying to say the same things as us. They just
of course they are. They're ecumenists.
In scholastic terms that are.
So this, by the way, if you want to see where Aquinas says this, it's in Summa Contra Gentiles, book 4, and it's. So he raises the question, is the Spirit spirated from the divine essence? You'll notice in section 3, he uses the human mind analogy. The Holy Spirit is the love of God, so that he collapses energy or attribute and person, by the way. The easy way to refute them is, they teach that the Holy Spirit proceeds from the will of God, which is Arian. They teach that?
No, I've heard you mention that, but I've never dug very deep in on that argument. So, all right. Well, I was just kind of curious how it's interesting, because your move seemed to be to cut me off at notional acts and essentially say that's ahistorical for a Christian viewpoint. That seemed to be your first move when I started speaking.
So
and then,
there's analogies that are made in Tertullian or some of the apologists to find ways to explain the Trinity, like, okay, the Trinity is like the Father's like the mind, the Son is the Word, and the Holy Spirit's like the will or the breath, right?
Yeah.
And what happens is that when Augustine writes on the Trinity, he does a lot of speculation, and he admits that. He says, I'm doing a lot of speculation here. And he tries to come up with all these ways to make the Trinity rational, cogent. He tries to find trinities in nature, little trinities everywhere, to try to make the doctrine sensible. He pulls heavily, explicitly from Plotinus, right? So he goes to the Aeneids, and I can't remember if it's book 4 or 5, but like some of the sections of On the Trinity are literally just copied and pasted sections of Plotinus out of the Aeneids, which is wild too, by the way. So it's a work that's designed to make the best case for the Trinity and the most rational case. And one of the things he does is he tries to come up with models of the human analogy or the mind or distinctions within the mind to make the Trinity work too. So when Aquinas and later people pull from this, they're pulling largely from On the Trinity when they try to make the case that there's all of these different ways to to make the Trinity work. Orthodox Christianity only goes with the Cappadocian Constantinople one model. That's why you see Photius really just repeating them. We don't do all of these like creative analogies type moves, and that's the only way you could even get this idea of like, I mean, the Trinity, like the Son is not a notion in the Father's mind.
Well, I don't think that's what I'm not entirely sure what they mean by a notional act.
Well, again, it's what they mean is so they try to say like, you can make an analogy again between a mind and a word, right? Like the mind produces the word, and because the Bible in John 1 uses this analogy, right? Like they go too far with absolutizing these distinctions, but these analogies, but
so you don't think like I tried moving this way with my brother, and it's trying to catch you a little bit, right? But like what if they ask you a question at first where they're like, can God's actions go beyond their intended bounds, something of that nature? And then when you clearly they can't, right? Then they're just going to tell you that the reason begetting terminates where it does and doesn't. Because one of our charges against them, right, is like, why doesn't the Son or the Spirit also beget or spirate? If that's a power of the essence. And their answer seems to be that, like, because of relative opposition, is there's this movement from the Father. It's almost like a line. There's a movement from the Father to the Son, and that terminates in its proper effect. And then because spiration is not at odds with that, the way paternity is, it continues onwards and then terminates in its proper effect.
Okay, what is the termination of spiration?
The termination of spiration is the person of the Spirit in their view.
Okay, right? Then how do two people have the power of cause?
Well, the act of spiration moves through the Son, and I'm saying this as they would, right? Like, not as if the Son were a secondary cause, but because the Son receives the divine essence complete, including the notional power to spirate, but he does not originate the power that belongs with the Father, who's principle without principle, and he exercises it together with him.
Okay, so is there one cause or two causes in the triad?
Well, they want to say that because he's exercising the same exact power as the Father, that there's only one. That's what they want to say. I don't know if that actually works logically.
Okay.
Right?
But, and again, to reiterate Photius's point, does the Spirit have that power?
Does the Spirit have the...
you said that the Son has the exact same power as the Father, according to them.
Mm-hmm.
Does the Spirit have that exact same power?
Yeah.
Okay, is it to be caused?
The ones that are kind of cleaved off by what in their mind is a logical necessity between between a dyad, right? There's an opposition there.
I don't understand what that means. Again, if the Father has the power to produce a person, and that's what it means to be the principal cause, and the Son also has that power, who is the Spirit also then a cause of?
I don't think they believe he's a cause.
Yes, they do. The Council of Lyons in Florence say that the Father and the Son together are a single principle of...
No, I don't believe they think the Spirit is a cause of a divine person.
I know that they don't. That's what I'm asking is, if the power of the Father is to cause the Son, and that's what it means to be a cause, and the Son has the same power, then why does the Spirit lack that?
Well, the Spirit lacks that because there's two notional powers in their logical scheme, and essentially because God's actions terminate and in their proper effects and are properly actualized from eternity, they think that essentially there's like this logical movement within the Trinity, and in each step you lose portions, right? You begin with paternity.
I mean, that right there should tell you that, like, this is nonsense. You lose portions of this power as you move through the Trinity. That's insane. Like,
relative opposition bars those from continuing onward in their logical movement, right? Like,
I mean, how does that even follow? Relative opposition is just a way to try to distinguish something from being not the other two. How does it follow from that there's this diminishing power of causing as it moves through the Trinity? It's just
well, like, it's not possible for my son to be me, right? Like, I beget my son, but it's not possible for him to be me, the begetter, right?
But the question is not, does he produce you? The question is, does he have the power to produce? By the way, is a person a notional power or a subject? This is just insane. Like, all this shit is just like gibberish. Total gibberish nonsense. I don't even know why anyone would find this convincing.
I do think it's odd to metaphysically reduce a person to a relation rather than having its own.
It's not just odd. It's like, it makes no sense. The word person is a subject. A relation is a predicate. So grammar should tell you that doesn't make any sense. I'm serious. Go read. I appreciate your questions, but if you read Losky, he just says it's not even grammatically correct.